Hi, this is Bob Samuels, founder of TechConnectr. TechConnectr is a marketplace and campaign management platform of best-of-breed account-based marketing lead generation solutions. We've partnered with the B2B Sales and Marketing Exchange to bring you wisdom from leading account-based marketing thought leaders. To that end, I'm happy to introduce you to Scott Brinker, Platform Ecosystem Vice President at HubSpot and the creator and leader of the MarTech Conference. I suspect you're familiar with Scott's famous and growing MarTech landscape chart. Scott, it's a pleasure to speak with you. How are you today?
I'm good, Bob. Excited.
Excited. What are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited because there's never been a more exciting time to be in marketing, right? Technology is changing so fast. The role of the marketing organization and shifting the directions the companies are going. Never had greater influence. All the exciting innovation that we hear happening around account-based marketing, account-based everything. It's a great time to be alive.
It's a great time to be alive. So for those few people that may not be acquainted with you, can you give a little bit of a background about you and about what you've been doing these past several years and about marketing and ABM in particular?
Sure. So I wear two hats. Professionally, I was the co-founder and CTO of a company called Ion Interactive that made a SaaS product for interactive content. And a few years ago, that was acquired, and then I joined a company called HubSpot, where I'm their VP of Platform Ecosystem, helping all sorts of other MarTech creators integrate better with the HubSpot platform. And then the other hat I wear is frankly just an enthusiast about this intersection between the world of tech and marketing. I'm the editor of the Chief MarTech blog that I've been writing for, over 11 years now, the program chair of the MarTech conference, and for better and worse, the fellow behind that crazy landscape graphic with the thousands and thousands of MarTech companies.
The art chart. So how large is that at this point?
Oh, just painfully large. The last one we did here back in April of 2019 had over 7,000. And I know I still missed a bunch because, believe me, they send me emails telling me that you missed us. Sorry about that. We're doing our best.
It's amazing. Well, I'd like to recommend that you start handing out eyeglasses and magnifying glasses with the chart.
Yes, possibly electron microscopes at the rate we're headed.
That would be good. Actually, the electronic version I think is really easy to drill into. I think so. That's a great way to view it. But I love what you've done, and thank you for your contribution to helping everybody figure out all this craziness around technology and marketing and who does what. So it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's exciting stuff. Yeah. All right.
Beautiful. So I'm going to focus on picking your brain about technology. There's different aspects of ABM, and I think when we talked earlier, you mentioned that ABM, it's not really a program; it's more of a mindset. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think ABM is a little bit like one of those, what do they call that, the ink blot Rorschach test, where you ask somebody what was ABM mean to you. You can get a very wide range of answers, and I think it's because there are things that are very tactical ways of executing ABM. There's certainly a set of MarTech tools that were designed with the ABM label as a key part of their positioning. But I get excited about it as, frankly, a little bit of a higher level up there, which is to say, if you're a B2B company that's specializing, particularly in like mid-market or enterprise sales, right? Like you're talking, there's basically 1,000 accounts in the world that you want to own. To not run your business around ABM just seems insane. And so it feels like if you start to view ABM, or even sometimes folks just call this, right, the account-based everything strategy, because it's not just marketing, it's coordination with marketing and sales and the services organization. If you really align around that, it just gives you such clarity and focus in what you're doing. And then for my world of, MarTech tools and MarTech stacks, it's simply then a matter of saying, okay, how do we build a MarTech stack that really supports that ABM mission.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to go through some aspects of what I see as ABM on my Horseshack test or whatever. And if you can maybe share a little bit about what you see as far as the technology and, what you've seen, where it's going, any kind of caveats. So the first one is segmentation and prioritization, figuring out, going through someone's contact list and figuring out who to go after, maybe who to go after first, maybe put it in different groups of types of messaging to go out. What kind of technology does that well, or what companies do that well?
Yeah, I mean, I think you certainly have specialist tools at this point. But I find that, one of the great successes of account-based marketing is it's become such a well-established framework that now pretty much all of the major marketing platforms have the ability to support that. So whether you're using, Marketo or using Salesforce or, I'll humbly put in a plug for HubSpot. I mean, the ability to be able to, segment these lists, prioritize them based on data, either data that you're getting from activity of how they've engaged with you, or other data that you pulled in to, analyze, who your target should be. And then, pull those things into marketing automation and sales-based sequences, and really use that to, guide a lot of those personalized contacts being driven through automation. That certainly seems to be like one of the starting points that people talk about when they look at an ABM stack.
Right. So it sounds like the starting point is fairly similar with the CRM or a platform of some sort, and then getting in either the first party or third party data to help understand, getting the signals of who to reach out to and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I guess, there's two different buckets. There's like a question of, okay, who should our accounts be? How am I analyzing the market to identify the target companies or organizations we should be going after? And then once I've got that prioritization, within those organizations, the hierarchy of buyers and different buyer-related groups or stakeholders or influencers in that process, and getting that mapped out, and also coming up with a strategy about how you develop those relationships.
And then, as you mentioned, so there's lots of different players at the company. There's not just one contact, and there's lots of different personas to reach out to, and each one has different pain points, I guess. So, any advice or solutions out there around identifying the different personas, the different pain points to reach, and then crafting the messages toward those specific personas and touch points?
Well, for identifying it, I will give a shout out to an app partner that works on the HubSpot platform, a company called OrgChart Hub. And they've created this product that's really, it's pretty straightforward, but it ends up being really super useful. And it's basically a way of visually creating an org chart inside your CRM. But the thing that makes it so cool is like everyone who's having contact with that company, whether they're in the marketing org or the sales org or the services org, has the ability to, first of all, just take a look at this chart, but also to add to it. When they identify, okay, actually I was having a chat with Joe, and it turns out here's Joe's relationship with Mary, and Mary's the person we're trying to, get her approval on this next contract, and you start to map this out, and you start to see, okay, well, who are the decision makers, who are the, influencers, where are there certain gatekeepers, okay, we're going to need to pass through, this team and procurement, again, in some ways, it's not some super fancy AI technology, but just being able to get your organization across departmental silos to be able to view the account and then use that as a mechanism for coordinating contact strategy. I don't know, again, there's so much technology out there, but at some level, it's like you want to keep that frame in your mind that ABM is about really deeply understanding the account.
Right. And it's beautiful to be able to, I love the way that that product sounds like you can visually see the types of people involved in the process and how they relate to each other. And the fact it's collaborative is wonderful. So I'll check that out for sure. Interesting. So, and then what about multi-channel outreach or basically, my understanding is you can't just reach out one way to each person or once. It's a whole orchestrated process of maybe different mediums. Maybe it's through a web thing, maybe it's a social thing, maybe it's email, maybe it's calling, maybe figuring out the different channels and having a coordinated effort, reaching out different ways, and then measuring the success of each and at least coordinating them all.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart aspect of this to pay attention to because, the truth is individuals have very different preferences of how they want to be contacted, under what circumstances they want to be contacted, and so even being able to make sure that what you're using as your system of record for, the contacts within an account is able to identify these appropriately. So, Bob, loves our email newsletter. And so it's to be, sort of layering in special content to reach Bob through the newsletter, that's the right way to go, versus maybe Jill. She doesn't want to do that. But when she comes to the website, if we're able to give her the content, promotional content that, is relevant to her, she loves that. She clicks on all the time. Some folks want to get alerted on SMS. Some people have, their messenger contacts. What happens if this person comes in and they're engaging in a chatbot with us on our website? Can we, based on their record, get them the right? This is both what makes marketing so exciting these days, and also what makes it so challenging. Because it just is a tremendous number of these different touch points, and individual contacts within an account have their preferences. So I think first and foremost is just being able to map that out. I think the other thing that is challenging, but really, really important, is just making sure you're synchronizing contacts across departments. So if they're hearing one thing, in a personal email from their, sales rep, they're not seeing something that is running counter to that as a, more I hate to say mass, but a more widely published, marketing message. And then, if they call up, someone on the services organization, that person in the services organization is going to be able to pull up that information and make sure that they're speaking appropriately, to that same content, just synchronizing these things. The technology is definitely a lot better for this, but it's still hard. This is, being an ABM organization is a challenging mission to pursue.
Yeah, very good. So important not to step on each other, and also to complement the different messages as well. It's great to be able to coordinate it, like you said, to synchronize it. So that
the more invisible you can make.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the more invisible you can make your internal boundaries, to contacts across an account, the better.
Yeah, which goes back to your collaborative, making sure that everybody's looking at the same songbook. And then you mentioned it's important to have the intelligence of, for instance, what people's preferences are and whether they like email, and they like reading it on Tuesdays and whatever. Who's good out there as far as providing intelligence and data, as far as figuring out who to reach out to, how to reach out to them, what to talk about, and when to reach out?
Yeah, it's an interesting market at this point in time, just because with things like GDPR and the new California Privacy Act, and just I think generally people's attitudes towards data and privacy are shifting, and so I guess first and foremost you want to have a clear strategy for what your first party data is around this, like being able to collect these preferences and give users friendly mechanisms for being able to manage their preferences. Preference management doesn't sound like a super sexy piece of technology, but it's actually such an important one, here, particularly in an ABM privacy, concerned world. And then I think the challenge becomes, okay, as you start to look at ways that you can enrich that data from other sources, just making sure that, you're, the provenance of that data, the quality of that data, making sure that, you're walking that line appropriately of serving the prospect and the customer as best as you can without, coming across as being, creepy or spooky or anything like that. Just last night I was coming back from a trip where was going to get some food delivered. I was looking at a restaurant at Grubhub, and then I decided, I'm going to skip that, order a pizza or something, and like 5 seconds later, I get an email from Grubhub like, hey, that restaurant you're still looking at, you sure you don't want us to get you a delivery for that? I'm like, I couldn't quite decide if that was on the line of like, is this helpful, or would you stop looking at what I'm thinking about for dinner? So
it could be a little creepy.
You gotta be really careful with this stuff.
There's a fine line, like you said. I mean, and that's a double-edged sword of having. I mean, to me, the more you know about me, that you can give me targeted things. That's a lot better than sending me an ad for Pampers, because I'm not in that market.
Yeah, what was it? There was a. Do you follow Market Tunist?
Target.
Tom. Yeah, Marketunist Tom Fishburne. He does this cartoon every week, around marketing stuff, and he did one this week that, this guy's giving a presentation, and he's like, "We found that our marketing is ineffective and annoying to our potential customers," and then someone else around the table raises their hand and says, "Hey, with the right software, we could annoy them much more effectively." Thanks, Tom. This is a shout out to the marketing industry. But, again, it does have a point. It's like all this technology that we're bringing to bear. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's like being able to leverage this data to serve people better is incredible. But it is, this really tricky line to walk of like, okay, making sure that the actual prospect customer feels like they're being served versus, feeling, somehow annoyed. And the thing that makes it really tricky is if someone feels annoyed, they'll, like, that's a very clear reaction. They're like, I'm angry about them, and they might reply, they might, unsubscribe, they might say something on social media. If you're doing your job really well and you're just giving them the right information at the right time, half the beauty of it is they don't even necessarily recognize that. It feels natural. It's just the natural flow of things. So as a marketer, it's like, whenever it doesn't go well, people can definitely point their finger at you and be like, why was that? But, when you're doing a really great job, actually part of doing a really great job is it becomes kind of invisible in the experience, and hopefully the way in which you're actually being able to take your reward is to say, listen, at the end of the day, here's the impact it had on people moving through our flywheel and moving through growth and customer and account retention. So but fun being a marketer in today's world, right?
It's certainly tricky, that's for sure. So my last question, which I think could be multi-part. So what is your projection? What do you see? You've seen all this in the past several years. What are we going to be talking about next year at this event? What are we going to talk about in 5 years from now? Where is this thing going?
So I think it's interesting that the technology is just continuing to innovate at an incredible rate, to the point that, it's somewhere between amazing and terrifying, right? I mean, we're seeing this with a lot of machine learning now. We're seeing this with other AI techniques that do things like auto-generating, content and auto-generating email and having conversations on our behalf in a way that's getting harder and harder to tell the difference between, humans and machines. I mean, there's just a lot of change and innovation that's happening here. So I'm not sure exactly what we'll be talking about next year, but I'm sure it'll be new stuff. I think the thing that isn't going to change is all this technological innovation is really challenging for the human side of the organization, changing the way we think about our marketing strategy to, take advantage of these new technologies, changing the way we manage, the marketing department, the way we're coordinating across marketing and sales departments. Any of these things that require changes to behavior or changes to sort of our mental models for how we approach it, that stuff is just hard. The technology is frankly 10% of it, and it's the human dimension of how an organization really adapts to what this technology can do. That's 90% of the work, and I think it's something that, again, as a MarTech guy, it's, this is I blame myself. It's like it's so easy, to somehow get carried away with the technology and forget how hard it is for change management to really be run effectively, to take advantage of these tools. But at the end of the day, man, you talk to pretty much any marketing leader that's going through this stuff, and change management is 90% of the battle.
So that my first reaction is, well, we just need to automate the human side of it. That's all.
They're working on that. Luckily, I do think marketing, because of the unique human dynamics and and the subtleties that still really play a big part in brand building, I actually think marketing is probably one of the safer professions, in this whole AI revolution. But just because it's safe in that grand scheme doesn't mean it's easy, because we're still the environment in which we're having to operate and provide leadership is, it's just continuing to change at such an incredibly rapid rate.
You can only automate so much. There's certainly a mix of science and art to this.
Yes, this is why I started out by saying I'm excited. It's a really exciting time to be in marketing.
So I'm glad to hear the enthusiasm. It's very infectious. So any other shout outs to folks that you're finding that? Oh, first of all, as far as the 5-year, 1-year, 5-year picture, what's your estimate of how many companies are going to be on your landscape map in 1 year and 5 years?
Oh goodness. To be honest, I don't know. And part of it is a question of where do you even draw the boundaries? Because one of the things that's just happening in the world at large is more and more people are creating software. There's this whole, for a really fun time, Google no-code, solutions. There's like all these tools that have emerged for letting people who have no engineering background, no programming capability whatsoever, to in drag and drop ways, create their own apps and web experiences and, services that are running on, serverless AWS, functions. That's just, it's crazy. And, again, this is, like everything else in marketing, the technology is changing at such an incredible rate. But what's hard for us is our mental models for how we manage this stuff is changing. So like when I dig into how many pieces of software somebody has in their MarTech stack, it often starts by saying, oh, yeah, we have 3 or 4 pieces, right? We have our CRM, we have our marketing automation, we have our website, bam, simple stack, but then you start to say, okay, well, let's dig into, what are you using for your social management over here? Oh, I've got that other thing. What am I using for my data analysis? Oh, it turns out actually for my website, I've got 24 plugins, to WordPress that I've installed. Do each one of those plugins count as a piece of software? Well, kind of. And so you start to go down that rabbit hole. I'm like, I genuinely don't know. I think you can make an argument possibly in the next 5 years, there will be tens of thousands of pieces of software that marketers use, and half of it they won't even realize it. It'll be just kind of invisible. Of course, we just installed this. It became part of my website. It became part of my chatbot. Never give it a second thought.
Beautiful. So to close, any shout outs to any of the cool companies you're seeing, either the solution providers or the solution users, the marketers themselves? Who's doing things well?
The challenge with the MarTech landscape is it's thousands of them. So I would feel if I was singling out a few, I'd be unfair to all the others. But I think I would say as a category, if there's one other thing to take a look at, it really is some of these no-code solutions, because I think what you're starting to see, and all right, I'll give you one, a company called Airtable. If you as a marketer have the ability to work with Excel, to work with a spreadsheet, it turns out actually now that being able to build a spreadsheet is an interface you can use now to create custom databases with Airtable, custom little apps with a whole bunch of tools that like take a spreadsheet as a model and then they turn it into a mobile app. So if you Google just no code, it is amazing what non-technical marketers and salespeople now have the power they now have at their fingertips. I think we're just beginning to scratch the surface of how that's going to change the relationship between marketing and technology.
Beautiful, beautiful, excellent. Well, Scott, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Any last thoughts or words of wisdom?
As I said, exciting time. So I know it's a lot going on. It can be overwhelming sometimes, but take a deep breath. We're all in this together, and we're going to figure out a really wonderful future.
Beautiful. I look forward to seeing it at the B2B SMX. Your presentation, I forget what time it's at. What's the topic?
So I'm actually going to give folks a framework about how to balance the technology side of this and the human side of it, and a little bit about thinking about, centralization and decentralization and marketing technology, which, again, as we were talking earlier about account-based strategies, right? You've got so many different people throughout the organization that touch that account. You need to have some sort of way of really being able to coordinate all of them working together and empower them to each do a really great job. So I will do my best in a TED Talk format to give you a framework on how to do that well.
Beautiful. I look forward to it. Thanks again, Scott. Have a nice one.
All right. Thanks. You too.